Very much for coming to this seminar. It is absolutely my pleasure, my delight, and my honor to introduce to you Dr. Alec Paterson. Dr. Paterson is the former Chancellor of Bishops. He has been an active and engaged member of the Bishops community, the McGill community. He has 50 years of experience in law, because he started when he was 5. He is a QC, and he also has a great interest in the theater. And so he's going to talk to you for the first half an hour about the relationship between law and trials and theater and performance. And then we're going to open up the discussion. He's going to discuss a little bit about where you would object. So hearsay, leading the witness, bring you into the finer points of law without being too procedure-oriented. And then we're going to open up the floor to discussion as you guys are starting to build your own arguments. And so feel free to ask questions about how to craft an argument, how to examine a witness. Really ask him. He is the best resource for that. We also have Matt Saunders, who is on Skype. He's larger than life right there. And he is, how many degrees do you have, Matt? 4, 5?
3, and then 5.
Okay, so he has lots and lots of letters after his name. He's currently in his 3rd and final year at McGill Law School, and he is an excellent resource for us. He's a Bishops alum from the year 2000. He did English, philosophy,
And political science.
Okay, so he had a little finger in everything, and was also on the SRC and was really engaged with the community. So you are in excellent hands today as we go through this discussion of all things lawful. So please welcome Dr. Paterson and Matt Saunders.
What I want to do is, as Jessica said, I want to start by talking a little bit about more of the hang-ups, the things to watch for on the stage, from my own experience. And then, after that, we'll go through very quickly the hearsay rules and the leading evidence rules and so on, when Matt can come in and help me a great deal. The first play that I did that fits perfectly in this seminar was at Bishops as the lawyer in The Winslow Boy. I don't know if you ever read The Winslow Boy, but The Winslow Boy was about a young boy who was at Naval College and was accused of stealing a check or a postal order from the locker beside him. And when he came home and his father said to him, "Did you or did you not steal that check?" And he said, "I did not." Then he said, "We were going to the law, and we are going to the House of Commons, and we are going for sure to get your name cleared." The father was a grumpy old man who got grumpier as the thing went on, but he hired the top barrister in London, and the top barrister came down to the countryside where they lived, and he put on a cross-examination of that boy, who was about 14, and in no time he had him totally in tears, demolished. So the audience sitting there thinking, well, he stole the check. And then he turns to the audience, and this was me, the lawyer, and he had a top hat, one of those old top hats that it's absolutely flat, but when you hit it, it opens up. And it was just a moment I waited for weeks to do this, because he looked out at the audience and said, "The boy is plainly innocent. I'll take the brief." And then, like that, and the top hat dropped out. But the top hat didn't drop out. Again, the fourth hit, it came out. All to give you that example, how much preparation is important. Not just preparation of the lines, not just preparation of the entrances and the exits, but even the small gestures and things that can go wrong, because they can really throw you in the middle of what is an important moment if you totally screw up, mainly because either your director hasn't rehearsed or you haven't rehearsed enough. So that's what I took from The Winslow Boy. There is a part of Hamlet where he instructs, gives advice to the players. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but whether it's very familiar to Shakespeare students, it's very familiar to all actors. Because any director worth his or her salt will start at some point to go through these rules. So if you'd be good enough to read that first paragraph where he opens his speech to the players.
Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you, trippingly on the tongue. Oh, but if you mouth it, as many of your players do, I had as lief the town crier had spoke my lines, nor do not saw the air too much with your hand, thus. But use all gently, for in the very torrent, tempest, and as I may say, the whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious periwig-pated fellow tear a passage to tatters, to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings, who for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. I would have such a fellow whipped for overdoing termagant. It out Herod's Herod. Pray you avoid it.
Thank you very much. Well, he went on, in the sense of what he said was, number one, stick to the lines. Don't ad-lib something because you think you're funny. You may have to because you've forgotten the line. But basically, Shakespeare is saying, I wrote this play the way I want it acted, you stick to the line. Secondly, don't become a ham. Don't, because there's a lot of stupid people that will laugh at everything you do, but the intelligent people will realize that you're not doing Shakespeare. Number three, don't wild gestures in the middle of everything because it detracts from what you're saying. Because it really is the guts of a lesson on how to act. I wish Jamie Crooks was here. Everything that Shakespeare says don't do, Jamie and I do. I mean, have always done, we've always hammed it up, we've always done what we can to get a laugh, and I hope he'll continue to do it in this play. But nevertheless, that's what Shakespeare wanted you to do, us to do. The next, I'm sorry to be so personal about this, but I really didn't know what else to talk about. The next play that I can recall very well doing with Bishops, have you all some familiarity with the Taming of the Shrew? Well, you know, when Kate first comes on the stage and Petruchio has spoken to her father about her, and he's been told that she's tough and crusty and so on, and Kate comes on the stage. Kate of Kate Hall, my super dainty Kate, for dainties are all Kates, therefore Kate, take this of me. Kate of my constellation, hearing my mildness praised in every town, thy virtue spoken of and thy beautiful beauty sounded, yet not so deeply as to thee belongs. Myself am moved to woo thee for my wife.
Moved? In good time. Let him that moved you hither remove you hence. I knew it at first, you were movable.
Why? What's a movable?
A joint stool.
Thou hast hit it. Come sit on me.
Asses are made to bear, and so are you.
Women are made to bear, and so are you.
No such jade as you, if me you mean.
Alas, good Kate, I will not burn thee for knowing me to be but young and light.
Too light for such a swain as you to catch, and yet too heavy as my weight should be. What is your crest? A coxcomb?
A combless cock. So Kate will be my hen.
No cock of mine, you crow too like a craven.
Nay, come, Kate, come. You must not look so sour.
It is my fashion when I see a crab.
Now at this point, Petruchio is supposed to reach a rage of all proportions and stalk Kate around the stage, who is supposed to collapse, but of course she doesn't, her character being what it is. The general consensus was, unbeknownst to me, that I did not show the rage sufficient to bring the result from Kate. And they had to figure out a way that when we got to this point, I really would do this part with much more passion and much more oomph. So, on the night of the play, it says here somewhere in the directions, Kate strikes Petruchio. In rehearsals for weeks before, she'd come around and stop there. On the opening night of the play, she came around and smacked me right across the face. That was a great bit of directing. I was so good after that that the Sherbrooke record said, never has rage been acted so well. I wrote a letter to the editor and said it wasn't acted, I was furious. But it was a great piece of directing for the first night. What do you do the second night? Because I'm waiting for it to be in all the time, and you can't quite pull that off twice. But anyway, all to say that directing is terribly, terribly important. But these lines that Shakespeare put in the mouth of Portia are, I think, what every, and I've given you this in terms of your plea. Those of you that make the plea, Jamie will, to the jury, if you can get up to the level of Portia, you'll be doing a fantastic job. The quality of mercy is not strength. It droppeth like the gentle rain from heaven upon the place. But it is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. It is the mightiest of the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His scepter shows the force of temporal power, an attribute to awe and majesty. It goes on like that for quite a while. But then, and this is the language that I think is so powerful. I have spoke thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou dost follow this strict course of Venice, must needs give sentence against the merchant there. And with that, you can imagine if Portia was before a jury, that would be the finale of the plea. But let me just give you another example of the difference. In the law courts, you know, if you're any good and you're a criminal lawyer, you know the judges. You know that the judge that comes on the bench with 50 years in his pocket, and the judges that hate fraud, and the judges that can't stand murder, and the judges that don't really mind false pretenses. So you plead before somebody whose track record is there. He's rendered hundreds of judgments, or she's rendered hundreds of judgments before you get before them. Not so in a play. The audience changes. Each audience has a different character. Each audience will react differently. At least you're only putting it on one night. But if you're putting on a play night after night, one night you get a laugh, the next night you don't. One night you get, it just constant. You've got to be prepared for that difference in reaction. Again, I give you an example in the 12 Angry Jurors, put on at the Centaur Theater about 10 years ago, and I had the lowest part in the play. I was the guard. And the guard came in from time to time, had no lines, as I recall it, which was a little frustrating. My ego to be put in a play in the Centaur and not be allowed to say anything. But at one point, the jury gets in a fist fight. They just come apart with each other. And they're standing like this, and the curtain comes down. And 10, 15 minutes later, the curtain comes up, and they're still standing, exactly in the same position. And the guard comes in. And the first night I went, and the audience burst into laughter and applauded. I went home, I phoned my son in Winnipeg, who's the associate director of the Manitoba Theater. I said, you won't believe it. I said, without a word, I got applause, laughter. He said, Dad, that's wonderful, but don't count on it happening tomorrow night. So the next night, I came on, and I handed him even more minutes. Broke into applause and laughter. I phoned my son in Winnipeg. I said, you were wrong. I said, exactly the same thing happened to us the night before. He said, you're doing it again tonight? I said, don't count on it. It may not happen the third night. The third night, came on the stage. Dead silence. Dead silence. Not a giggle, not a clap. So very forlorn, I phoned him. I said, how did you know? Well, he said, was my mother there the night before last? Yes. Was your mother there tonight? Yes. It takes one to start one.